Always trust.
We ask the questions.
What is needed in the world?
Is that going to
Ovo je Al Jazeera, lijep pozdrav. Gost Al Jazeera je ambasador Sjedinjenih Američkih Država u Bosni i Hercegovini, gospodin Patrick Moon. Mr. Moon, welcome to our program.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm glad to be with you.
Bosnia and Herzegovina is facing a very difficult time. Many would say the worst crisis ever, of course, apart from the war. Would you agree on that?
Well, I don't know. I hear that about every other week. So I think that we have to realize that Bosnia and Herzegovina is a very complicated political structure. There are many competing interests, and that there are issues of great importance that have to be addressed by the politicians of Bosnia and Herzegovina. So I don't know that this is any worse than at other times in the history of Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Can this country function on its own?
Yes, of course. There's every reason to believe that the political leaders of this country can come together and cooperate to find solutions to the issues that face the country. The important thing is that they have to focus on the top priorities. From our perspective, the top priorities are moving Bosnia and Herzegovina toward NATO membership and EU membership. A lot of different issues fall underneath that, but these are the top priorities which need to be addressed to improve democracy, improve the economic situation, to strengthen the rule of law. So these two issues have to be the top priorities, and we'd like to see the political leaders focusing more on these top priorities.
But they haven't been focusing.
Not sufficiently. 3 years since the Sejdić-Finci decision and still no solution. It looks like to me they're not making a top priority. 2.5 years since the NATO foreign minister decision on Bosnia having to register defense property in order to participate in the NATO action plan, membership action plan. I don't see that as a top priority. I think that they need to focus on these issues, solve them, implement the solutions.
You've mentioned the NATO, Bosnia and Herzegovina and the NATO. How far is this country from its membership in the NATO?
It's very close. Very close. It's very close to the membership action plan. That's the first step, membership action plan. They agreed on a decision, on a solution to registering defense property last March. All the political leaders, they signed it even. This is what we're going to do. In May of last year, they came together and decided at President Dodik's request that they also include registration of state property. So that's fine, but they haven't done anything since then. Why? I can't figure it out. I understand that it's President Dodik is the one who has refrained from participation in any steps to implement these decisions from last year. It's in his advantage. It's in everyone's advantage. Register the property to the ones that the government wants, the government keeps. The property that the government does not want, it goes to the municipalities. In addition, importantly, registration of the state and defense property is a precondition for the closure of OHR. Why can't he be in favor of these two steps? I don't know.
Is he only one to blame?
As far as I understand it, when I talk to all the political leaders, they say they're ready to move ahead. But President Dodik is the one who comes up with new excuses about why they can't implement it. And quite frankly, I don't understand those excuses.
Can there be any consequences for him for such a behavior?
Well, as I said, he's not benefiting from the solutions. Property which is given to the municipal level governments and satisfying precondition for closure of OHR, which is something he seems to make as a top priority.
Do you see an OHR action against Mr. Dodik as something which is more likely to happen or not?
What we want to see is Bosnian political leaders coming together themselves, finding solutions to the problems. If Bosnia and Herzegovina is going to demonstrate to the international community that it is ready for membership in NATO, ready for membership in the EU, then the political leaders here have to find solutions, not the international community. If the international community is finding solutions, imposing solutions, that indicates that Bosnia is not ready. So we want to see these issues addressed by Bosnian political leaders.
Can we talk about the responsibility of international community? We all know that Bosnia and Herzegovina is very much run by the Office of the High Representative. It's, according to the Dayton Peace Agreement, it's the ultimate authority in the country. Also the Peace Implementation Council, in which United States plays a very important role. Can we talk about them also being responsible for deadlock in Bosnia?
I don't think so. I think OHR is playing a very positive role here. Number one, we're encouraging Bosnian political leaders to make the decisions, find solutions to the issues which is blocking progress toward NATO, toward the European Union. For example, OHR is today helping to find a solution to the Mostar situation. The Constitutional Court found that the current election law there is not constitutional, and the political leaders down there demonstrated that they were incapable of finding a solution by themselves. So last year, OHR offered to mediate. All the political parties have indicated their support for this process. We believe OHR can help them find a solution, very important to the future of Mostar.
Another question is the structure of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The US Embassy has announced it would help change the structure of BH entity, the part of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina. What has been done so far?
Well, we've talked to a lot of people. Number one, I've talked to the political leaders and described the process that we propose. I've talked to a lot of experts, academics, and we are organizing a process that will develop some recommendations for changing the Federation Constitution. A process that will be based upon inputs from experts, from academics, NGO representatives, for example, but not the political parties. We want, however, to ensure that we have a process which produces pragmatic, realistic solutions. And these solutions we would then take to the political leaders, get their support for reforming the Constitution of the Federation.
Do you have any sort of idea or plan what would Federation should look like?
We don't have a plan for the process. We have a plan for how to develop a process to provide these recommendations, to develop these recommendations from the ground up, from the citizens themselves. But we don't have a proposal of our own. That'll be the responsibilities of the participants in the conference that we will organize this spring. What we do want to see, however, are recommendations, proposals, which will address the basic problems in the Constitution. The Constitution provides for a government structure which is overly bureaucratic, redundant, and very expensive. It does not serve the best interests of the citizens. We want to see recommendations which will streamline government, reduce the costs, and better serve the citizens of the Federation.
You've mentioned the conference. Who is going to take part in the conference and when it is going to take place?
It'll be later this year, in the spring most likely. We haven't set a date. We hope to soon. We're also looking at the list of potential participants. What we're thinking about are NGOs or citizens who have special interests, special expertise in this area.
You said you've talked to political leaders in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Do you have their support for this structural change?
I've talked to all of them, laid out our proposal. Every one of them has indicated support for reform of the Constitution. Now, I fully realize that each one of them has a different idea of what that means. What we will develop is, or we will help to develop, is a set of recommendations that we believe, we hope, will be the best way forward, and that all political leaders will have to compromise in some way to support these set of proposals. But we believe that it will be the best possible set of solutions that will improve governance for all the citizens of the Federation.
So far, have you seen them willing to compromise?
I certainly expect them to do so, and I've told them that they will almost certainly have to compromise. I think the timing is important. Doing it this year, 2013, is very important, and doing it as soon as possible before the 2014 elections gives politicians more flexibility and more maneuverability in terms of looking at compromises.
So there is a time frame for this structural changes?
We think it needs to be done this year. and as soon as possible.
What do you expect from Croatian political leaders in Bosnia and Herzegovina?
We've talked to Croatian political leaders. We have briefed them and their staff on our proposals on this process, and we will certainly keep in touch with them. They've been very supportive.
Is a third entity, is it an option, an idea?
It is not. The third entity idea is unfortunately one which is looking to the past, to a situation of divisiveness. What we want to see for the future of Bosnia is cooperation, bringing citizens together to work on the issues of most importance to them. The third entity idea is stuck in the past. It has no future whatsoever. It would never be adopted in the Federation. And I think it's unfortunate that some political leaders and analysts seem to think that this is some sort of realistic option. It's not. Let's don't waste time on this. Let's find positive solutions that serve all the citizens of the Federation, no matter what ethnic group they may come from.
Is it going to be a tough question?
It will be. In terms of the organization of the Federation, that is a top question. There are 10 cantons. They are, most people consider them to be overly bureaucratic, expensive. We expect the experts to come up with solutions on how to improve that situation.
Are there any bottom lines?
The bottom lines are that it has to streamline governance, it has to reduce costs, it has to ensure that the Federation better serves the needs of the citizens. As I said, all the citizens of the Federation. We want to see these experts, NGO representatives, to develop pragmatic solutions, solutions which are within the realm of the politically possible.
Do you expect any help from abroad, particularly from Zagreb, help from Prime Minister or President of Croatia?
As I said, I see the leadership in Zagreb as supportive of this effort. We will continue to brief them, and I believe that they will be supportive of the process as we go along. Other international institutions, organizations are also helping us with this process. OSCE is signed on, the EU delegation. We also expect that some international NGOs will be supporting this process.
Have you already contacted authorities from Croatia, from Zagreb?
We've talked to them, yes. Here in Bosnia, their representatives.
And what do they say?
As I said, they are supportive of the process. They want to be involved. They want to see a positive outcome.
Now we've been talking about structure of Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, one part of the country. But what about the structure of constitutional structure of the whole country? Are there going to be any initiative to change, to recreate the country as a whole?
Let's look at the near-term history of Bosnia. There were two important initiatives to change the Dayton Constitution, the April Package and then the Butmir process. Both of those contained, I think, some very positive changes that could have promoted democracy and stability in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Unfortunately, they did not succeed. Now the process has changed. If Bosnia and Herzegovina wants to join NATO and the European Union, it will have to look at its constitution through this process and determine whether or not that constitution is meeting the needs of their status as members of both organizations. We'll have to see how that process develops, but if we look at the history of this, as I understand it, every candidate for membership in the European Union has had to amend its constitution as part of that process. So I would expect that that will certainly be the case here in Bosnia as well over time. In fact, the Sejdić-Finci decision is one as the first step where the Constitution will have to be amended in order for Bosnia and Herzegovina to move down the path toward the EU.
Do you see that this situation is going to change and this Sejdić-Finci case will be implemented soon?
It will be implemented. The question is how soon. I think it was Mr. Čović suggested in March. Personally, it seems like they could do it a lot faster than that.
And how do you see the authorities of the Republic of Srpska, another BH entity, how do you see them in this process?
Well, they are certainly participating in the process for both NATO membership and for EU membership. NATO membership, as I said before, President Dodik signed off on solutions for resolving the defense property issue. On the EU process, I know that the RS, as the Federation, have had a broad range of interactions with the EU working toward steps as part of the process for accession.
But what about constitutional changes? Have they been cooperative enough so far?
Well, I think you need to address that really to the EU. Certainly they have been engaged in the process.
But what about their, many would say, constant rhetorics, which do change sort of a political climate in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and many would say lead to only destruction, not a constructive.
Well, let me, if I just take it a step further and put some words in your mouth, the statements that we hear from the Republika Srpska about secession or some sort of independence, those are just totally non-productive rhetoric. Bosnia and Herzegovina, the RS, the Federation, the state government needed to be talking about how they can cooperate and move forward together, not how they might pull apart. And indeed, this sort of rhetoric just also drives away investors. Investors want to come into a country where they know that there's political stability, where they know that they have a good idea about the future of the country. They're not going to put down their money if they think there's risk they're going to lose their money. So the more that political leaders can talk about how they will come together, work toward these objectives, toward integration into Europe, that will help the economy here. It will bring in money, it will create jobs. And so certainly we feel that this is the most productive way to proceed.
But they haven't been talking about cooperation, haven't they?
They could do more. They could do a lot more.
The Council of Ministers last week adopted changes to radio and television system legislature, leading to creation of a new Croatian channel. Is it acceptable?
Well, first, that's just a first step. There's quite a few steps that would be required to ultimately approve this. Our view is essentially that public television should be based upon regions and not upon ethnic groups. That's the way forward for this country. That's the future for this country. Once again, divisiveness is the past. Cooperation, working toward common goals together, compromises, that's the future. That's what political leaders need to focus on.
So you're not going to sort of endorse such a change of legislature?
I don't think so, no.
What do you think about the system as a whole? For many Croats would say in this country, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, they're not satisfied with the public broadcasting service.
Well, it's a clear indication that the public broadcasting service needs to be changed, improved. The quality needs to address all citizens. Programming has to be responsive to the citizens' needs, and that's what public broadcasting should do.
But not another public broadcasting service?
Once again, based upon geography more than on ethnic groups.
Ethnic groups. Do you see that there is a political will in Bosnia and Herzegovina for tackling crimes and corruption in the country?
There is. We have seen efforts to arrest criminals, to address organized crime. We see almost every day in the paper reports of the police making seizures of illegal drugs, for example, or smuggled goods. But I think also that the law enforcement agencies need to continue their work to increase their capabilities to fight crime, to professionalize their operations, and most importantly, to cooperate among each other. This is key. Sharing of information is key to finding criminals, building cases against them, and ensuring that the citizens' interests are protected.
Do you see agencies, law enforcement agencies, as capable of doing such a job?
They are capable now. They could do better. It's hard to believe that any police force is perfect. We have worked with the police forces in this country for 15 years or more, helping to train them, professionalize them, promoting good cooperation, good information sharing. And we believe, we're quite proud of what we've been able to do to help professionalize the police forces, law enforcement agencies of the country. But at the same time, we see room for improvement. And I think the leaders of the various law enforcement agencies would agree that they want to improve their capabilities.
What is the obstacle on their way, in their work?
Well, the political structure of the country is a complication, but that is something they'll have to deal with for certainly on the short term. But again, they can increase their training programs for their police. They can do a better job of sharing information, working regionally and internationally on developing information and pursuing criminals.
The man who is on the blacklist of the Department of State, Nasser Kelmendi, has been a business associate to a prominent BH politician or prominent BH politicians. How you as an US diplomat in Bosnia and Herzegovina, how do you see this situation?
Well, certainly we are concerned about Mr. Kelmendi, as our step to put sanctions on him indicates. But at the same time, I have not seen any information that would back up these assertions about his associations with political leaders here. If there were such information, I think it should be pursued.
Is it good for a country to have such a situation?
Well, crime is something that every country has to deal with. Corruption, another big issue, is also common in many countries around the world and certainly regionally. And the corruption issue in particular is one which I think needs to be addressed much more aggressively in Bosnia and Herzegovina, not only by the police and the courts, but by the political leaders who have to send a message to their governments, to the police, to the law enforcement agencies, that they want to see corruption pursued. Cases need to be pursued. Develop the information, pursue the cases, put people in jail, and help clean up this country.
Have they been reluctant so far?
Yes. But I see a little bit more willingness to speak out against corruption, and I think that's important. It's a good start, and I will continue talking to them privately, urging them to do more to fight corruption, whether it is in government or in the universities or in the healthcare system, wherever it may occur. Citizens here want to see efforts to fight corruption in this country.
How would you describe the influence of neighboring countries on Bosnia and Herzegovina?
Certainly, regional relations are very important for Bosnia and Herzegovina and the other countries in this region. And generally, relations are good, but there is room for improvement. I think that since the elections in Belgrade last year, that imposed a period of some reflection on the countries in the region, and we're now seeing some steps to help improve relations between Belgrade and the other countries in the region. Again, cooperation among all countries is important. It brings stability, it brings predictability in relations, and countries need to work together on important issues related to security, related to law enforcement, for example, and importantly related to economic relations.
Do you see that the status of Kosovo is in any way worsening the crisis in Bosnia and Herzegovina?
No, I don't think so. I think that's actually a red herring. Kosovo is a very different situation than what we have here in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and any attempt to draw some analogy there is not accurate. What we see is Kosovo, we believe the United States very strongly, obviously, that's an independent state, and it's pursuing its own relations, its own future on that basis. Obviously, Kosovo, Serbia need to work out their relationship, and the EU is playing a very positive role to help bring them together.
Have you ever urged political leaders in Bosnia and Herzegovina to recognize Kosovo as an independent state?
Well, certainly that is our policy, that is our view, but it's also very clear that, at least for the near term, that will not be possible.
So there hasn't been a pressure on BH leaders to recognize Kosovo?
We certainly have urged common views in dealing with Kosovo by all elements, all governments in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The RS certainly has a different view from the Federation on this and is presenting a consensus approach.
Do you see any good move in making economy better in Bosnia and Herzegovina?
Oh my goodness, yes. The economy in Bosnia and Herzegovina is in real crisis. There's huge unemployment here. The growth rate predicted this year will be either 0 or in the negative area. I've seen reports that the recession may have already started in the RS. There's huge budget deficits which are being covered by international assistance, international loans. The economy needs to be built up here. There needs to be encouragement of foreign investment. There needs to be privatization, especially in the Federation, of state companies to help stimulate the economy. There needs to be a concerted effort to improve the laws and the regulations of the Federation and the RS to permit businesses to operate more freely, more efficiently, to stimulate growth rather than being barriers to growth. This is a huge workload that needs to be addressed urgently by all the political leaders of this country. The citizens demand it.
Yet another question is political deadlock in Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina. What is the best way to solve it?
In any democracy, the lubricant of getting things done is dialogue, compromise. Through dialogue and compromise, political leaders reach solutions to the problems. If political leaders are inflexible, standing on two sides of the room and yelling at each other, that doesn't find solutions. Democracy demands that they come together, work together, and compromise so that the best interests of the citizens, all citizens, are served. And that's what needs to be done much more here. We saw it happen early last year when finally the political leaders came together and formed the new state-level government. That was an example, and some of the subsequent meetings after that were really productive. They came together, they sat down, they looked at the issues, they found solutions. We need to see more of that.
Thank you very much for your time, Mr.
My pleasure to be with you.
Gost Al Jazeera je ambasador Sjedinjenih Američkih Država u Bosni i Hercegovini, gospodin Patrick Moon. Ovu emisiju, poštovani gledalci, možete pronaći i na našem portalu. On je aljazeera.net/Balkans. Hvala vam na pažnji.
We ask a question.
What is needed in